We have the pleasure to be with Professor Guillermo Jimenez, who is the author of the book ICC Guide to Export and Import. Guillermo, could you explain us what is the main aim of your publication?
When I was working at the ICC in the 1990s, I had the good fortune to work on committees dealing with Incoterms, with the Uniform Customs and Practice for letters of credit, and I also worked closely with colleagues in the Court of International Arbitration, and also worked with the working group on ICC model contracts. And eventually I realized that all of the ICC products actually work together and play an essential role in different parts of the life cycle of an international trade transaction. And yet there was no book that explained the overview of the international trade transaction and the role of the ICC products. And so that's what I decided to write.
Could you give us a live example how your book is going to be useful for international trade professionals?
Even very experienced trade professionals know certain aspects of the trade transaction very well, such as the bankers may be very familiar with the documentary credit process, and the freight forwarders may be very familiar with international transport, and the lawyers know the legal aspects. Yet, very often, they are not familiar with the other aspects of the process, and this leads to very serious difficulties. One example I was just thinking of was a case that I worked on last year involving a Turkish seller of construction material to an American buyer. And it was a contract for the sale of approximately $2 million worth of goods, and payment was to be by letter of credit, and as always, the letter of credit was subject to the rules of the ICC, the Uniform Customs and Practice for documentary credits. And what happened in that case was that the shipment was loaded and sent from Istanbul to the United States. But when it arrived in the United States, the Americans refused to accept it, and instead they placed a condition, which was that instead of paying $800 per ton, which they had agreed in the contract, they would only pay $500 a ton. They demanded a very large discount. This was quite shocking to the Turkish sellers, who were so upset that they filed a lawsuit in the United States. Now, it's a surprise to many that actually it was the Turkish seller who was wrong. And the reason is that they had not understood the process involved in using the letter of credit under the ICC rules. They had submitted an inspection certificate that was unsigned and therefore unacceptable to the bank. The bank considered it a discrepancy. By the time they corrected that mistake, the letter of credit had expired. And therefore, there was no way for the American buyers to be assured that the cargo that was on the way to them was of contract quality.
Okay, Guillermo, what ICC publications or ICC trainings would you recommend to the international trade professionals who would like to learn more about ICC rules?
I think a good place to start is with some of the model contracts, such as the ICC model contract for the international sale of goods, or the ICC model contracts for agency and distributorship. And that's because these are very, very important contracts that are used all the time. Next, I would say it's very important for everyone that's involved in international sale of goods to have a copy not only of the Incoterms in their latest edition, which is Incoterms 2010, but also the various ICC guides that explain Incoterms, like Incoterms Q&A, questions and answers. And that's because every international sale contract should contain an Incoterm or something very much like an Incoterm. Also, it's important to have some documentation on the various ICC rules for payment mechanisms, such as the UCP for documentary credits, or the uniform rules for demand guarantees, or the ISP, which are the rules for standby credits. Finally, it's important to have a good dispute resolution clause, and right now the world's preferred mode of international dispute resolution in business situations is arbitration under the rules of the ICC Court of International Arbitration.
Could you tell us what developments do you see in store for the future?
What we're going to see in the future is a continuation of something that's already happened, which is that the profession of international trade is achieving greater respect. International trade is not only important for virtually all large corporations, but it's an important economic sector for nations and for the entire world. And yet to this day, international trade professionals do not yet receive the same sort of academic training or even market prestige as, for example, a lawyer or a doctor or a certified public accountant. But that is changing as companies realize that they have to train their employees to a level sufficient to avoid the kinds of problems and difficulties which I mentioned earlier. So ICC is participating in this process by providing increased quantity and quality of trainings on all of the ICC products. And for people who are unable to come to one of the ICC venues to take these trainings in person, there are now a series of trainings which are available online. And I think all of that is going to help to increase the stature and prestige of the profession of international trade export.
Thank you, Guillermo. I think this is the end of our session. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, only that I look forward to seeing what continues to come out of the ICC. The ICC is the world's preeminent trade facilitation organization, and as the world continues to become more and more globalized and rely more on international trade, the role of the ICC will become greater and greater, and I look forward to that continuing.
Thank you for your message. We are going to finish this Google Hangout. Thank you to all our followers, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Eva.
Bye-bye.